Alright, this is Blake here, and I got a little treat for you today. I've been working on a new design for the logo. Check her out. Young Bay Bear right there. She's still in the editorial process, but today we're going to be talking about the abduction of Betty and Barney Hill. It's one of the most famous alien abduction case in modern history, so let's get going. So this happened back in September 1961. The Hills leave for Niagara Falls for their honeymoon. As you can see, they're a black and white couple. They're church-going people. Barney was in the war. They participated in voter rights, civil rights movements. They're very credible people. All their supervisors spoke very highly of them, and I believe they brought their dog along with them. So they started coming back on their way home. They were going south through New Hampshire, and Betty looks up and she starts to see this light in the sky. And at first they thought it was probably a meteor or a star or a satellite, and they just did not know what this thing was. It was about Cannon Mount that they first saw it, and it kept following them for about 30 miles down to Indian Head. And at this point, Barney's starting to get upset because Betty's freaking out. She says, like, I don't know what it is. It's not a plane. It's strange. Look at it. So he pulls the car over, and he wants to look at this thing by himself. And it starts bewildering him. It has no noise. He doesn't know what it is. He goes out there and he looks at it with his binoculars. He said it looks like a big pancake with curving rows of windows. So basically, your basic UFO shape there. And he's asking himself, what do you want? He's looking at the binoculars, and he sees this being, this man standing there, looking over his right shoulder, smiling at him. He was wearing this kind of German black glossy Nazi uniform. He had a black scarf around his neck, and he looked to be there were also about 8 or 11 men looking in these windows that he saw as well, looking like they were wearing German officer uniforms, he thought. And they were kind of moving like robotically, didn't quite look human, had gray faces, blue lips, black eyes, so basic gray there, possibly androids. So as he's looking at this dude, I think Barney was getting this telepathic reading from this guy, this creature, and he's saying in his head, "Stay there, keep looking at me, keep looking." And he's like in this mesmerized trance or something. And he remembers seeing these two red eyes, and I think this is what was hypnotizing him when he was locked in this trance. And at this point, he's really freaking out. And he's seeing a UFO and he can't believe his eyes, and he's like trembling with fear, but he's like locked in on this thing with the binoculars, and he just rips the binoculars away from him and starts running for his car. So he's freaking out. He runs back to his car where Betty's waiting.
What the heck is it, Edgar?
Get your big butt back in the house.
So they're in the car, and this thing swoops around and gets in front of them. Start hearing this code-like sound striking their car, something like spinning magnetic fields, buzzing and tingling, and they felt vibration in their bodies or some kind of beeping, and they lose conscious and memory at this moment. And later they ended up like 35 miles down the road. And the only reason they know what happened is because they went into hypnosis sessions with a Dr. Simon to recall these events. And he still has these red eyes in his mind, he's saying. And then these group of men in black jackets are in the road now. Couldn't really see their faces or their uniforms, and they split up in two groups, and this is when the abduction happens, and they actually take them. So there's two sides. There's Barney's side and there's Betty's side, which both were gotten from hypnosis sessions that they did. So for Barney, he's feels like he's being suspended in the air, and he's floating, and they're dragging him, I guess, to this thing while he's like passed out sleeping. And or I guess he's basically sleepwalking, and his shoes are all scuffed up and stuff, and he gets up on the UFO and they start running experiments, and He laying on the table on his stomach, pants fly was open, the cup went over his private parts. They started extracting his sperm. He said he heard this voice saying he won't be harmed, be calm, it's gonna be over soon. And he kind of was being walked and guided. And when he opened his car, he was back in his car again. And he sees this UFO bright moon fly away. So now we're going to Betty's side where she was conscious during this whole thing. So I believe most of this communication was done telepathically between her and the leader. And she's hearing, don't be afraid. We're not going to harm you. We just want to run tests. You'll be home in no time. And she said it was like a foreign accent. So she goes up the ramp to the UFO and is taken into this room. And there's crew and doctors visiting her. And they take off her dress, get her on the table, lay her on her back. And she sees like this instrument. It's like a cluster of needles, and the needles have wires running from them. And the doctor comes in. He has a very long needle in his hand, and she's freaking out. She's like, "What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do?" And rips her dress, and he sticks the needle in her navel, her stomach area, and there's intense pain. And she's screaming, and he comes over and he puts his hand in front of her eyes and just like waves it in front of her head, and the pain just goes away. And so she kind of trusts him after this. All the pain disappears, and she asks him, why are you doing this? What is this? And she's like, this is a pregnancy test. Get your clothes dressed back up. Barney's not ready yet, and we had to run a few more tests with him. So she's alone with the leader, and she's talking to him now, and she's like, no one's gonna believe me this happened, or it's real. Can I have some kind of proof to bring with me? And on the cabinet, she looks over. There's this big book that she wanted, and she asks if she can have it. And the guy starts laughing, and he's like, can you even read those symbols? And here are some of the symbols that she saw. And he goes, yeah, sure, you can have it. So she takes the book, and then he goes over to this like a wall opening. He pushes a button. This metal wall opens, and a 3D map comes out, and he shows her, this map. Now the heavy lines are the trade routes. The solid lines are, the occasional routes that they travel, and the dotted lines are the expeditions. She wanted to know where they came from, and he started laughing. And he says, "Oh well, do you know where you are?" And she said no, and he's like, "Well then, why should I even tell you?" That kind of stuff. She hears a noise outside, and these doctors come in, and they start examining her teeth with like a wiggling them and stuff and trying to get them out. And they're puzzled. They don't know what's going on. They're like, how come Barney's teeth comes out and yours doesn't? And they're really like amused by this. They didn't know what it was. And she's like, "Oh, Barney has dentures." And then she had to explain to him what dentures were and why her teeth were like real and his wasn't. What I got from this is they're basically doing experiments on the humans from Earth. And so after everything's done, she's saying, "Will you come back? Will you want to see us again?" And he's like, "I don't know. It's not my decision to make." And she goes, "Well, how will you find us?" And he says, "Well, we always know how to find you wherever you are." So some type of bio locating or something. And as they're coming back to the car, and Barney's still sleepwalking, and they take the book back, and she starts freaking out. She's like, "How am I going to prove to people this is real?" And he's like, "Well, the others don't want you to have this book, and they all have equal rights just like I do." So they take the book back from him, and they get back in the car. And then he says, you guys aren't going to remember this. They don't want you to remember, and if you do, you're both going to remember different things, and it's just going to confuse you. So when they wake back up, they're about 40 miles away from where they were. They kind of blacked out, and they had memory wiped and amnesia. And here's a map I'm showing of the basic path that they think they took. And they got home, and their watches weren't working, and some type of technology or magnetism that ruined the watches. And they were concerned they might have radiation poisoning or something, so they put their luggage by the side door. The tops of Barney's shoes were all scraped up, and they have no memory like of this still. Like all this that they got was from hypnosis sessions, and the leather binocular strap was torn in half and ripped from when he broke the trance. And Betty's dress and zipper was all torn in the lining, and it had some kind of weird powder substance on the dress, and on the car there are these little tiny circles. No, it's not weather spots. It was, weird type of circles, and they put a compass on the hood of the car, and the needle went crazy and it was all magnetized somehow. And yeah, weird. Phyllis Bolger did chemical analysis on the dress, and there was anomalous findings from separate laboratories. And based on the evidence, she said that this did happen. The powder was on the dress and it was on the hood of the car, and weird. And Dr. Simon did the hypnosis sessions, and they had like remnants of PTSD and traumatic, shell shock victims, like the ordeal that they went through. But it was just some wild stuff. And here I'll show you. These are the pictures that he drew later of the craft. His personal drawings. And basically, I said, it was like a pancake with the windows and the two little red things on the side. Here are the pictures of what they believe the beings look like. It's your basic small grays, right here. And this one is what Barney saw, like the leader, when he was looking over his helmet and looking over his shoulder. And this one kind of looks like he has Down syndrome, but this is basically what they look like here. And those symbols that I drew or I showed you earlier, Bud Hopkins had a similar experience where he drew the same stuff that she did in 1975. Different occasions, didn't know each other. They compared them, they were identical. The star map that she saw, she drew it down, and it was cross-examined by Marjorie Fisher, an astronomer, and it matched the Zeta Reticuli constellation, which can only be seen in the southern hemisphere. And this was before computers and everything, so she was in the library, doing all this. But yeah, that's about it. It's crazy. And then they've made books about it and movies and went into pop culture. And this is, one of the biggest UFO abduction cases ever. These are just normal people. They didn't want fame. They were an interracial couple. They didn't want attention, more than they had to. And this happened to them, and they were getting dreams and stuff. And they went to see doctors, the hypnosis sessions, and they brought it all out. And it turned out, this actually happened to them. So it was basically experimentation on humans, examining their skeletons, their joints, their eyes, their skin, their mouth, reproductive organs, just learning more about the people of Earth. I think this is one of the cases that is real, but I think we all know who the real culprit is. All right, that does it, Bears. Links over below. Check it out. It's a great one. I'll leave a little clip from a great movie for you here. Bear out.
It's precisely what kept you from greatness. Arrogance and fear still keep you from learning the simplest and most significant lesson of all.
Which is?
It's not about you.